Okay, so I just have the message that we're live, so I'm calling the meeting back to order. The meeting was called to order at 10 to 2, so we had consideration of a closed session that was regarding an HR matter, about a personal matter, about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and the in-camera direction was provided by council to the CAO on that matter. There's a lot of noise on the line. I'm not sure if that's coming from me or someone else. There, it seems to have dissipated. Okay. So the next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. You can make that statement at this time or when the issue arrives on our agenda, if that pertains to yourself. Approval of the agenda. I'm looking for a mover and seconder for approval of the agenda. If a mover and seconder could call out, please.
Councillor Dalgety.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Maiden and seconded by Councillor Dalgety. And we'll go through the list, and if you could indicate your support for the approval of the agenda, saying yes or no, starting with Councillor Dalgety.
Rick Manelli.
Has joined the meeting.
Councillor Dalgety.
Yes.
Councillor
Yes.
Ferguson. We have Councillor Ferguson on the line.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Gerard.
Yes.
Councillor Holmes.
Yes.
Councillor Maiden.
Yes.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor Manelli, approval of the agenda, yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you. Agenda is approved. And we have the approval of the minutes from our meeting dated April 21st. This is found on pages 4 to 8 of your agenda package. I'm looking for a mover and seconder for approval of the minutes. I see Councillor Holmes has raised her hand. Is there a seconder?
Councillor Gerard.
I think Councillor Ferguson jumped there first, so we have our mover and seconder. Is there anything arising from the minutes anyone wishes to speak to? I'll give a moment for anyone to indicate if they have an issue. Okay, hearing none, all those then in favor of approval of the minutes, starting with Councillor Dalgety, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Holmes?
Yes.
Councillor Maiden?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Manelli?
Yes.
Thank you. So minutes are approved. And that brings us to our first report. It's from Recreation and Culture. And I believe we have Calvin Murphy, our Recreation Manager, on the call with us. So this is regarding the Adopt a Park policy. And I will go to Calvin Murphy, Mr. Murphy, for some opening comments about this report before going to council for discussion.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Calvin here. So yes, as you can, as I'm sure you can all see from the report in your package, and just to give you a little bit of history, this was something that Council directed the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee to research back in October. After that time, it went back to our committee, and and over the last several months, there has been much discussion and dialogue on this particular policy. We've reviewed other policies from other municipalities, spent a lot of time just kind of thinking over what we need with respect to an Adopt a Park policy here in Mississippi Mills. There was a discussion with our CAO Kelly, our facilities health and safety coordinator Dan Cousineau, and I did get sent for some legal advice as well. So there was lots of energy and thought that was put into this particular policy. Following that time, so basically from that point on, I put together this report, and it's now in your hands for review. We're hoping that we can get started with this. Obviously, in the times that we're dealing with right now, it's not something that that we're going to see active in our parks immediately, but it's something that we definitely would like to have in place and ready to go once we can get back into our particular parks. One thing I would like to mention, there has been over the last, I guess, couple of days, some discussion from groups that have traditionally worked in some of our areas of Mississippi Mills, whether it be in our parks or other areas, and have helped with this type of work over the years. I just want to be very clear and state that this particular policy is in no way meant to discourage or eliminate any of the work that they have done, these other groups have done in the past. For example, the Horticultural Society and some of the work that they've done. We have, as I know you're all aware, we have many different parks within the municipality, and they are not all attended to from different groups, and this policy is something that we are hoping will bring people or other groups to the table to start looking at some of the other parks and helping us care for them and do some of the things that need to be looked at in certain areas. So I think, and our committee, our Parks and Rec committee, certainly think it's a plus. We think it's a good policy moving forward. I see a lot of benefits to it, but I just wanted to be very clear. I have responded to some of the emails that I received regarding, a few of the questions regarding the policy from some of these groups, and I think I've been able to answer the questions, and I think we're in a good position to move on. And that's really all I have at this stage in terms of initial comments.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just go to the CAO. If there was anything additional you might like to add to the discussion before we add to the report, before going to discussion with council.
Just to reiterate or to hopefully clarify, this is meant to put some rigor and some parameters around how volunteers and how we manage them and how we interact with them.
Sorry, Mr. Kelly, it's just the adopt a park policy that I was looking for comment on just yet, not the volunteer policy. Sorry if I wasn't clear on that one.
Okay, same. I think the comments are in the same way about how we manage the adopt a park component here, and that's the volunteers and how we work with those volunteers. And I think the comments will lend themselves to both, but I'll leave it at that if that's what you wish, Mary.
Perfect, thank you. Unless you felt it relevant to speak to the volunteer policy at this time as well. I mean, they do go somewhat hand in hand, but...
Nope, that's fine.
Okay. Councillor Ferguson, any comments or questions to the adopt a park policy? All right, Councillor Ferguson, have we got you?
Yes, I have now. You got me now?
There we are.
Okay, yes, thank you. On specifically to page 14, paragraph number 2, the last sentence about the municipality not assuming any responsibility for personal injury, that type of thing as it goes on there. Now, I know, and you mentioned about not working or conflicting with the volunteer policy, but if we step ahead to page 20, it's the same. They do cover it. So is there a conflict there? Or is it just the way the two of them are written?
So if we can go to Mr. Murphy.
Yes, okay, let me just flip over to page 20 here. So in page 20, it's the volunteer policy, correct?
Yes. Under number 3.
Sorry, Councillor Ferguson, your question again was related to how they're conflicting, is it?
Well, I just wonder, in fact, if it is, because on 14, it says will not assume responsibility. And on 20, obviously, it's in accordance with our general liability insurance policy, which I agree with. So is there a conflict there?
There must be. I think we may have to look at just correcting the language a little bit on that one then, with respect to the two different policies, which I think we can easily take care of.
Yes, I'm sure. And I guess once you reach 880, you're not going to be covered anyway. Is that correct?
Well, let me get there first, okay? Oh yeah, now actually that'll be covered more in the volunteer policy.
Yes. Yeah.
There we go. So is that clarified for you, Councillor Ferguson?
Yes, thank you. As you stated, we'll look at it and see if there is conflict of wording.
Okay. Councillor Gerard, any comments on the adopt a park policy?
Actually, yes. The only thing I realize that it's for parks in general, but the people that Calvin has been speaking to are members of the Ramsey ward. The questions were with regards to areas, not necessarily parks. And I'm wondering on page 11, it says parks interested in adopting, and then it says including specific areas if applicable. I'm wondering if it could be cleaned up a little bit and say areas interested in adopting, and then include specific parks if applicable. Because, for example, one of the groups is the whole area of Appleton. So they're not necessarily looking at just one specific park. They're looking at an area that they're going to be looking after.
Okay. Did you have any comment, Mr. Murphy?
No, I think we can try and clean that up a little bit as well.
Okay. Was there anything?
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Holmes?
No comment.
Okay. Councillor Maiden, any comments or questions?
Just wanted to comment and recognize the participants in the committee and the staff working together on this, and to say that really this activity has been going on for a number of years with different little groups, but this is really just formalizing it, and I'd like to thank everybody for all their really hard work on it. Thank you.
And Deputy Mayor Manelli?
No, just that I hope the document doesn't discourage people from coming out and helping. The huge document, that's all.
And Councillor Dalgety, any comments or and questions from yourself?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. So we don't have a motion on the floor at the moment, so I'll look for either a motion of recommendation to approve the policy with the change noted by Councillor Gerard, or I would also offer for your consideration because we're in a special council meeting format, which is different from how our normal work would happen for items like this, in that committee of the whole would discuss an item like this, and then it would go to council. Not that I imagine there will be any changes to the policy, but just in I guess in recognition that there are the two horticultural societies and the beautification working group, and there has been a little bit of confusion about what these policies mean. So the other suggestion I offer to you, if we don't recommend the policy for approval this afternoon, that we defer until our next meeting in the end of May. That would allow then the groups who maybe still have some questions and whatnot to have that opportunity to take a look at this. I think it might encourage some discussion with these groups and also provide some assurance that, as Mr. Murphy had said, this isn't in any way taking away from those groups that have worked for so many years in our parks and whatnot, but really as an addition to. So I offer that for your consideration, and I either look for a motion to defer to our next meeting to pass this, or I look for a motion to recommend the policy as presented with Councillor Gerard's noted change. Is there someone who would wish to put one of those motions forward?
Councillor Gerard.
Sorry, Councillor, was it Councillor Gerard?
Councillor Gerard. I'm in agreement with deferring it so that it can be worked on and just tweaked a little bit. I've also heard concerns from people with regards to it being a little bit overcomplicated, though I know to some degrees it has to be. I feel that it would be beneficial to speak to some of the groups that will automatically or immediately be joining up and see what the feedback is. So if we could ask that it gets deferred until the next meeting and come back with any alterations that may have been suggested, I would appreciate that.
Okay. So I believe, and I'm just looking or asking for the clerk to correct me if I'm wrong here. Actually, I just got a note. May 19th is the next meeting. Thank you, CEO. So, Councillor Gerard, are you wishing to defer then to the May 19th meeting and allowing?
Yes, I would like to defer this till the May 19th meeting.
Okay. And then allowing staff to have any further conversations with the groups who are working in the parks? And we'll, yes. Okay. Is there a seconder for that deferral? Councillor Holmes?
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder. Is there any discussion to the deferral? And I'll start with Councillor Gerard.
No, thank you.
No, nothing further. Councillor Holmes?
Yeah, I have to agree. I've been hearing from people who are a bit confused about it and see it as overcomplicated, and I would hate to discourage people from volunteering. So I'm pleased that we're going to defer it.
Okay. Councillor Maiden, anything from yourself regarding the deferral?
No comment.
Deputy Mayor Manelli?
Just hopefully it can come back a little bit shorter.
Okay. Councillor Dalgety?
I'm okay with the deferral. No comment.
Okay. And Councillor Ferguson, any comment on the deferral?
No comment.
Okay. So no comments on that. We have a mover and seconder. I'm looking then for all those that are in favor of this deferral, starting with Councillor Dalgety.
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson? I think I heard yes, Councillor Ferguson?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Holmes?
Yes.
Councillor Maiden?
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Manelli?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So this is deferred then to our next meeting on the 19th. And so we'll have the opportunity to hear any further feedback from the community on it. Our next report is the volunteer policy report, which does kind of go hand in hand with the adopt a park policy. I will start with Mr. Dan Cousineau, who is our facilities and health and safety coordinator, for some comments about this report to start. Mr. Cousineau, you're on the line with us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
As you're aware, I was tasked with putting together this volunteer policy in collaboration with all department heads. As we're all aware, our municipality has benefited from our volunteers forever, and we definitely recognize the role that they play in our community. So this policy is in place to ensure the safety of both the municipality and our volunteers, everybody involved. It provides the framework to link up volunteers and volunteer opportunities, and it ensures just a smooth flow and an inventory of volunteers that we can tap into whenever we might need to. So we've put together the report and the policy that is now in your hands. I hope that you've all had a look. I know there have been several questions come across the table, and I'm open to comments. I know Councillor Ferguson mentioned the slight discrepancy with the waiver and the insurance coverage. So volunteers up to the age of 80 are covered under our policy. So we will make that little repair. But yes, I'm open to comments, and I look forward to your feedback.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cousineau. And CAO Kelly, do you have any comments that you'd like to provide as well?
Yes, so just to try and, I guess, put it in some context, what we're trying to do here is put in place a management framework for understanding who is volunteering for us, what they are doing, when they are doing it, and if any issues arise, such as somebody gets hurt. And we're putting basically some rigor behind that so that it's not so free-flowing. And I understand that a lot of the comments that we have been getting is with regards to the provision of information and what types of information has to be provided. But remember, when the direction from council to develop this volunteer policy was given, it was given at the time that you are also considering the health and safety policy for the organization. And the question was, does this policy also cover volunteers? The answer was no. So what we've done is we've taken the same approach in terms of how are we going to manage somebody, or how are we going to provide them with direction? How are we going to understand maybe some of their limitations if we don't have any information on them? So we have a context of, this is what we're going to ask you to do. This is the training that we're going to provide you. This is how you're going to interact. So, you know, we do run into occasions where there are conflicts between people and they're doing things. So we've tried to, you know, anticipate that and put some context around how we would resolve that. As well as if somebody does, you know, if there's a question about somebody using heavy equipment, no. Is there somebody using maybe a municipal vehicle? No. Will they be using municipal tools? Yes. And what happens if they do actually get hurt? And as Dan said, we did clarify that. Now, this volunteer policy is also different than a context where somebody would be volunteering with the municipality in the case of an emergency. So for instance, if we've declared an emergency and somebody is volunteering with Mississippi Mills to fill sandbags, this volunteer policy would not apply to them. That would be a different component that we'll be addressing under the emergency response plan and what happens there. Because when somebody is volunteering for us in an emergency situation, they're also covered under our workers' health and safety, their workers' insurance. So they're actually considered, for all intents and purposes, an employee at that point in time. So we're trying to clarify these things for people so we understand what the role is, and of course, if something does happen, what they're available or what they can avail of. So I'll leave it at that, Mayor Lowry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Kelly. So I'll go to council for comments and questions, and I will do so starting with Councillor Holmes.
So I did have a few comments which I passed off to Dan already. Things like the volunteer captain, do they need to be present at all times? And it sounds like you can have like co-volunteer captains, but they do have to be present. Also, I'm a little bit concerned about what medical information must volunteers provide. Does it include like all their medications? What medical issues do they need to, let us know about? And can they sign a waiver if they decide they don't want to tell us? I understand the whole thing about we want them to be safe and whatnot, but by the same token, we're not paying them and they are volunteers. Can one of them go to a flower garden and weed on their own? I think that's happening maybe right now with the horticultural group and the beautification. So I think there's a few more questions that need to be clarified before I'd be happy voting for this policy. That's all.
Okay. I don't know if Mr. Cousineau, if you wanted to respond to any of that at this point.
So I had sent an email quickly to Councillor Holmes. Yeah, so in terms of the volunteer captains, when there is a volunteer group that's going out, the volunteer captain is more intended to be the point of contact between the municipality and the volunteer group, and to hold on to any documentation that might be pertinent to their group and the area that they're working in charge of first aid kits and so on. So I think that point may have been clarified. In terms of the medical information, that waiver was put together in the hopes that people would provide any information that might be pertinent to the role that they're fulfilling. Like as a very generic example, if somebody has an allergy to bees and they're carrying an EpiPen, I mean, anaphylaxis it can come on very rapidly, and if somebody needs to know that they have the EpiPen and they can buy that extra time before the first responders get there, I think that is valuable information. And do we need to know all the medical history? No, not necessarily, but there's certainly a way that we could maybe tailor that to better suit the needs.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Did you have further comment there? I cut into you there.
No, I'm good.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you. Councillor Maiden, any further comment from yourself on this?
I just noticed on page 26, the volunteer contract, there's a whole list of things, you can tick off a document sent to volunteer. And there's a column that says required yes or no. So that suggests to me that perhaps not all of those things would be required from every volunteer. It would depend on what the volunteer job was, I guess, and what the trainer considered. Is that correct, Dan?
That's correct. So yeah, page 2 of that volunteer contract is to be filled out by the volunteer coordinator. And that's almost a checklist to make sure that the volunteer gets sent all the information that pertains to their volunteering position. In some instances, for events, there'll be certain requirements and not necessarily others. And for some bigger events, there'll be site-specific safety plans where there'll be additional training required. So it's very much a checklist to make sure that nothing gets forgotten and that the volunteers are going to be kept safe and in the know.
Thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Manelli, any comments or questions?
Yes, just can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, just on bringing this out now, what about social distancing, masks being supplied, gloves? Do you think we're jumping the gun on this? Do you think maybe it should be right after all this is over with? Might be a whole different set of rules and might be a whole lot less volunteers too.
Yeah, I don't necessarily see this volunteer policy being implemented right away, obviously with the current COVID-19 crisis. Definitely we will be keeping an ear to the ground and hearing what public health has to offer in terms of safety guidelines. But at this point, I don't believe there's any volunteer postings being posted for the public. So this is just in preparation, but I agree with what you're saying, that we might not be living in the same world in 2 months' time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And going to Councillor Dalgety for any comments or questions.
Just a comment on the application and contract. I was just looking quickly if there's a disclaimer that all their information will be kept confidential and secure.
It's at the bottom of page 24. There's the personal information contained on this form is collected and pursuant to the Municipal Act and will be used for the purpose of responding to your request only. So I guess we can say that it won't be shared with anybody and we'll keep the information confidential. we can add that line item.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's all, Mayor Lowry.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Ferguson?
Yes, thank you. One question about the timing of it, and having been involved with volunteers, a lot of volunteers over the years. If it's a particular function, a large function, and mostly on a weekend, how quick can we sign someone up that maybe just will come out of the blue and say, I'd like to volunteer because of the circumstances, maybe immediately we need someone right away type of thing, and they may not be available, or the ones that have signed up may not be there. So how timely is it, and how quick is it to sign someone up?
Well, at this point, we have the paper applications. Ideally, this is going to be an online possibility on our website, and once we have the information logged, the volunteer coordinators should be able to turn it around rather quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Gerard? Councillor Gerard?
Yep, came on, sorry.
Okay.
I guess I'm hearing a lot of questions that possibly are looking for us to defer this so that there could be some changes made. Other than that, I have no comment.
Okay. Was there any further comment either from the CAO or from Mr. Cousineau, given the comments that we have received, before I look for a motion?
No, I think they're all good comments.
Okay.
Mayor Lowry, just to maybe clarify, there, with regard to the confidentiality piece that was brought up, one component here is that if there is a group and there is somebody who is taking charge of that group or being the point person for that group, that person would have relative knowledge if somebody on that team requires an EpiPen, has a heart condition, or something like that that would impact the work that they are doing. So that is an obvious sharing of information if somebody has some type of medical condition. Now, again, remember, the way we approached this was that the same rigor that we would apply to knowing if somebody has a medical condition as an employee, we would want to know about that medical condition as a volunteer if it was going to impact what they were being asked to do. Such as, are we going to ask somebody to be involved in beautification if they have an allergy to bees? Are we going to ask somebody to be involved in tree planting if they have an allergy to trees, or grass mowing, or that type of thing? There's also an aspect here about a vulnerability check. That's a check to ensure that the people that we have volunteering don't have a history where we have to be cautious of who they're with and who they may be in the presence of and things like that. So when we talk about signing somebody up, Councillor Ferguson, I think it does matter what we are intending that person to do and some of the parameters around that. As a vulnerability check can't be done in 5 minutes by one of our staff. It does require outside groups to attest to the person's history. So with regards to some of these things, I think there's going to be a little bit of a flow. This is setting up an overall regime of how we're going to work with volunteers. And I think as we look at each individual situation of what we're asking people to do, there will be components of this that will be tailored or taken out to address the situation. So one of the groups one of the situations we've had a good deal of the discussion about is the pitch-in component, which is people pick up garbage bags from various businesses and they go and they clean up garbage in a ditch or in an area or what have you. That's actually a national program that's not actually managed by the municipality. We wouldn't see those people going through this situation as a volunteer that's been vetted by the organization. That's not what's entailed here. So really, there are some nuances depending on what the situation is and what we're asking people to do. I'll leave it at that, Mayor Lowry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. So at this point, I'm either looking for a mover and seconder for the recommendation as you see it in your agenda package, or I'm looking for a motion of deferral so some of these items can be fleshed out a little bit more, similar to the deferral we saw with the parks policy. So I'm either looking for a motion for the item or the recommendation in the agenda, or a deferral.
Councillor Gerard, I would like to see this deferred to the, what did we say, May 18th meeting, please?
May 19th meeting?
19th meeting, yes, please.
Okay. And is there a seconder for that deferral?
Councillor Holmes, I can defer it. I can second.
So there's a seconder then. And I will go through the list then if there's any comments or questions on the deferral specifically, starting with Councillor Maiden.
I'm okay with the policy. I don't think it necessarily should be deferred, but I'm okay with deferring it.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Manelli, any comments on deferral?
No, I'm kind of glad we're deferring it. I think it's quite a little document for a volunteer, and I really hope it doesn't take away from the people already going out by themselves. So I'll have a little more time to think about this one. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Dalgety, any comments?
I'm okay for deferring, just for some wordsmithing. I'm okay with that.
Okay. Councillor Ferguson, any comments?
Yes, no problem, deferral.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Sorry, I was just looking for comments. If you have any comments further.
I'm fine with deferring.
Okay, and Councillor Holmes, was there any further comments for yourself regarding the deferral?
No comments.
Okay, so we have a mover and seconder then for deferral to flesh out some of these questions, and it would be coming then back to the May 19th meeting. So I'm looking for support. You're being in favor or not of this deferral. And I'm starting with Councillor Dalgety then. Are you in favor, yes or no, of the deferral?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Holmes?
Yes.
Councillor Maiden?
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Manelli?
Yes.
Okay, so the volunteer policy is then deferred to May 19th to allow for a little bit more work on the issues brought up by council. Thank you for that. So this brings us to item number 3, which is the extension of the joint tender for road salt through Lanark County. And I will go to our acting director, Mr. David Armstrong, for some comments on this recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good afternoon, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and members of the council. I'll try and keep this one short and sweet. So essentially, we tendered out last year in 2019 with County Lanark's joint tender for road salt for winter maintenance. The contract went out well. Delivery was seamless with the subcontractors. The material we were using was satisfactory. Terry McCann, the Director of Public Works for Lanark County, received a letter from the supplier Cargill indicating that they were wanting to extend our contract for a year at a reduced per ton rate of $105.87. It was brought down from $114.44 from last year's rate. We didn't have any issue with carrying on with this. The department did call around looking for some ballpark similar pricing from a couple other suppliers. Everything indicated we were kind of in the right range. You may see $1 or $2 per ton savings depending on availability, though, which is also a concern with this commodity. So at this point, we're fine with going through with a 1-year extension with Cargill, or if council wants to direct us in another direction, we're fine with that.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Armstrong. Is there any comments from yourself, Mr. Kelly?
No, Mayor Lowry, no comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So starting with Deputy Mayor Manelli, any comments from yourself regarding the extension of the joint tender for road salts?
No, I think it's a good idea. It secures the County of Lanark's salt purchasing too. The more they buy, the more secure their contract is. So we partner up with them. I think that's great.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dalgety, any comments or questions?
Through the chair to Mr. Armstrong, It stated that we've used approximately 30% so far this year. So am I right in thinking we got 70% of what we purchased in the last budget for basically November, December? And if so, like, I'm in agreement with this lower price, but do we have to commit to a quantity?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So they through this contract, they give us what they deem an allotment of tons per material. We were at 2,050 based on 2019's tender. We did ask for, I believe, 2,400 this year. I think we were just over 2,300 tons last season, and that hasn't been communicated to getting that back. So we don't have to bring in that quantity of material. It's just a matter of what the supplier does to sort of allot amounts per municipality, so they can. It's more for their fixed amounts than it is for ours. That kind of makes sense, Councillor?
Yes, thank you. That's all, Mayor Lowry.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Yep, no comment. The price is right.
Councillor Gerard.
Comment?
Okay, Councillor Holmes.
No comment. I think it's just fine to extend for another year.
Okay. And Councillor Maiden.
No concerns.
Okay. So I'm looking for a mover and seconder then for the recommendation.
Councillor Maiden, move.
Thank you.
Councillor Dalgety, second.
Okay, thank you. We have a mover and seconder.
Sorry to interrupt, Mayor Lowry. Just that you need to make sure that the second part of the of your motion, clearly, if everyone's okay with to pursue option 1 to accept the 1-year extension with Cargill, because right now the way it reads is pursue one of the options.
Oh, thank you for pointing that out. Okay.
So I drafted that. Your second part of the recommendation here is that Council directs staff to pursue option 1 to accept the 1-year extension with Cargill alongside Lanark County.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification. I didn't have that one underlined here. Okay. So let's just make sure that that's clear. Can you read that out again for us, Jean, so it's clear for everyone?
Okay, so the entire motion will read that Council receive the extension of a joint tender for road salt through Lanark County report as prepared by the Acting Director of Public Works. That Council directs staff to pursue option 1 to accept the 1-year extension with Cargill alongside Lanark County.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification. So mover and seconder, that was the intention of your motion? Okay, I'm saying yes with Councillor Maiden, and if that's the case for yourself as well, Councillor Dalgety? As a second? Oh, we've maybe lost Councillor Dalgety.
Okay with that, Mayor Lowry.
Perfect. Thank you. So I'm just going to leave a moment if there's anyone with any further question or comment on going with that option 1, which is going alongside Lanark County with this tender. Okay, hearing no further comment, I'll go to voting then, and looking for votes of in favor or not of this recommendation, starting with Councillor Dalgety. Yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Holmes?
Yes.
Councillor Maiden? And Deputy Mayor Manelli?
Yes.
Thank you. So we will be joining that tender, continuing on for another year with Lanark County. And that brings us to item number 4. This is on pages 31 to 35 regarding the insurance payout for the damaged truck that we deferred from our last meeting. There is a recommendation here. We will have to choose an option as well. So before doing that, I will go to our Acting Director of Public Works, Mr. Armstrong. And I understand we also have our mechanic, Mr. Ben Kipp, on the line. I will go to Mr. Armstrong just for some comments on this to begin discussion.
Yes, thank you again, Madam Mayor. So again, I will try to aim to keep this short, maybe not as sweet, but certainly shorter. So this was deferred from 2 weeks ago. I believe everyone on the line is aware of the background on it. I think the point we're trying to get through with this report is to try and capitalize on the option to save some money and capital costs moving ahead. We did invite council, deputy mayor and the mayor to come down and have a look at both our fire truck that's in the middle of a conversion now, as well as the damaged plow truck that's in question for this report. We've received a number of questions, some great feedback from council, deputy mayor and mayor as well. We were happy to have them down to have a look at it and see firsthand what we were dealing with and what we were aiming to achieve with this with the outcome of this report. I think that's really all I have to report. I do have Mechanic Ben Kip with me as well, so we're both here for any questions that anybody may have.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. Were there any comments that you had, Mr. Kip, to begin our discussion?
I don't think so, Mayor Chris O'Leary. I believe that if there's any other questions that over and above what was discussed yesterday, I'd be happy to help out any councillors with that.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just go to the CAO as well. Is there anything you wish to speak to out of the report and our visit yesterday to the equipment before turning to council?
No, I'm just waiting to hear what council has, what your thoughts are on proceeding in this direction.
Okay, thank you. So I will go to council then for comments and questions, and starting with Deputy Mayor Minnelli.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this lot. I don't think I've thought about it lots, and I don't think I'm in favor of fixing up the wreck truck. $28,000 to buy it back is quite a bit of money. We're not in the used truck business. We're in the municipality business of fixing roads. So we have one truck that the fire truck that we're working on now. I think it's going to turn out to be a really good truck, but I think the other one should be left, and we should take our money and subcontract out the plowing to another company. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Dalgety?
I'm in favor of option 4 and 5, actually. I'd like to see the insurance money go towards the single axle for the $240,000, and have a look at option 5 if we get stuck next winter, to have the ability to bring someone on to help us out through contract. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Ferguson.
Well, I was impressed with the retrofit. I also expressed concerns in reference to the straightening of the frame and also about the box. Both of those questions were satisfied to my liking, and I would vote in favor of number 1, although I certainly would always like something new, but I think in this case we are getting virtually something new, so I would vote in favor of 1.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Gerard.
Yes, thank you. My question, I guess, would be to Public Works and the mechanic. With regards, I've been reading through these page 31 to 32, commenting, near damage, major damage to this. I'm curious, based on what we're going to be removing from this vehicle and going forward, is it my correct in thinking that majority of it is with regards to keeping the engine out of this truck?
So I'll go to Mr. Armstrong or Mr. Kip if either of you or both of you would like to provide comment there.
Yep, through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Gerard. So the engine is part of it. It's more the actual chassis, the sort of the skeleton of the truck. So it's the motor, the frame, the cab, So the extent of the work to repair the damage that was there is just straightening the back end of the frame. When we met on Friday morning and Monday afternoon, in attempting to explain sort of the extent of that work, essentially there's a number of body shops that do this, and it's not something that's not common practice. A lot of trucks do. I do regret to say do tip. Things like this do happen, and it's not extraordinary work by any means to have this type of frame straightened out, and it's not the extent of it isn't as bad as you could allude to or as you could imagine it to be. Essentially, it just has a little bit of a twist in the back end. It was more from the weight of the sand in the box that's kind of pulled the frame sideways a bit. So it's like I said, it's not an extraordinary job for them to perform this. It's fairly, like I said, it's fairly routine. So I believe if that answers your question, Councillor Gerard. If not, let me know.
Thank you. It doesn't. My question was actually with regards to whether the biggest reason that we're keeping this truck is for the engine, because on page 32, the second sentence, it actually says that the tender is for a new truck chassis. So my question was with regards to the motor, is that the reason that they're basically, we want to buy back this damaged vehicle?
For you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Gerard. So essentially, yeah, that is part of it. We want to keep all those components of truck number 23, the motor, the cab, the chassis, which is the frame, everything with that truck, because it's essentially only serviced us for 10 years. And for the cost of about half of a truck, we can put another 10 to 15 years of this truck back on the road and into the municipality's life.
Okay, I guess my question is more again towards the engine. Due to the fact that the engine did slide off the road, with regards to how it was positioned, how long it ran, what the effects of this accident would have had on the engine in the event that we put all this money into this vehicle and the engine only lasts us for another 20,000 kilometers before it dies because of significant issues due to the rollover and dispersion of gas and what have you. My question is, are we keeping this truck? Because if we were replacing or buying tender for a new truck chassis, are we keeping this truck as an option because of the motor?
You, Madam Mayor, Councillor Gerard, our mechanic Ben Kipp is going to chime in for an answer.
Yes, so the engine in this truck is in perfect condition. It didn't exactly, the whole front of the truck didn't tip over on its side. It was still upright. So the engine is in perfect running condition. The other councillors, some of the other councillors did hear it run. We had it running out here the other day. We did drive this vehicle back to the shop. There is no damage to the motor in this truck whatsoever.
Thank you. I guess that and for my, because I'm not a mechanic, my personal opinion is if an insurance company sends out an adjuster who chooses to write off a vehicle, that write-off classification will actually get put onto the VIN number, and from now forward, this truck will always be considered a damaged vehicle. So even though it says here that the insurance has been inquired and would cover, can you give us a better understanding as to what they're saying that the insurance would be somehow compromised, or there would be less options. So therefore, I'm wondering if this vehicle were to possibly come back and have another accident, or the engine were to quit on it, what is going to be our outtake of taking the $140,000 to $60,000 that you're suggesting that we put into it what would you actually be able to get back out of this vehicle?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Gerard. The insurance company will insure this truck once it's recertified through an auto body shop that is included in the list of the works for this truck as market value replacement. So essentially if something happens with this truck again, they'll send an adjuster out, they'll look at the truck and say, this truck is worth, I'm not even going to put a number out there to put it in anybody's head. They'll deem a market value for this truck in the shape that it's in, and that's what we'll get as a replacement for it under our insurance.
Even though it has a classification on it that it has been written off and therefore no longer a serviceable vehicle?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Gerard, yes, that's correct.
Okay, I think I'd question that, but thank you.
Did you have any further questions, Councillor Gerard?
No, I believe that I'm in favor of what both Mayor Manelli and Councillor Dalgety have suggested. Thank you.
Councillor Holmes, questions or comments?
I guess I too wonder about the insurance, the market value replacement, if versus putting that money aside and perhaps buying a new truck, which would last 20 years, and if it was wrecked at year 18, would have a payout that I think that the original cost of that trucks. So I'm kind of interested in what would be the market value replacement of that truck once it is back on the road.
Through you, Madam Mayor.
If it's going to cost $142,000 at a minimum to put it on the road, would it be insured at that amount at the start?
Through you, Madam Councillor Holmes. I personally, I'm not an insurance adjuster, so I wouldn't fathom a guess on that dollar amount. I would say that market value for a truck that has suffered this kind of quote unquote damage and has been repaired and put back on the road, if they're willing to insure it, it still has a nominal value to it. I can't say that they would insure it for more or less of the cost of repairs for it. I honestly couldn't say. I believe they would, but again, I'm not an insurance adjuster, so I couldn't answer that honestly for you.
Thank you.
Anything further, Councillor Holmes?
No other comment.
Okay. Councillor Maiden?
It was interesting to look at the truck. It didn't look like it had that much damage to me, but then what do I know? And one of the things that does stick in my mind is the insurance company. Insurance companies are not known for going around throwing money away. If they thought it was a write-off, or if they thought it could be repaired, I think they would have offered an amount to repair it. I would be worried about the utility of it and whether the cost to put it back on the road really is the cost. Maybe it needs new tires, and new tires on trucks that size are probably $500 and up. I don't know. So I kind of favor option 4, maybe to use the insurance payout to get our new truck that we were planning to get anyway, and maybe putting any balance in reserves to put towards getting a new truck, because I haven't seen the schedule of truck replacements yet. I understand that's in the works, but I would say better to keep the extra money in reserves than not. That's all I have.
Okay. And I think I started with you, Deputy Mayor Manelli. I've moved my I have a little sticky here that keeps track of who's spoken, and I think I started with you. Is that correct, Deputy Mayor Manelli? Do you have any further comment? We may not have Deputy Mayor Manelli.
Yes, I do have other comment.
Okay. Yep, go ahead.
I think that this is a good opportunity to be able to contract a certain portion of our roadway. We've talked about this for ages to subcontract some of the plowing out, and this is a good opportunity to put some a little bit of money in our pocket and try it for a year. And if it doesn't work, we'll order a new truck. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just had a couple questions myself here, if I may, now that council have offered their questions. Last year we were short a driver, and we were fortunate in that the operators that we did have were willing to take on a little bit more, so that that gap was filled that way this past year. My question to Mr. Armstrong is your thoughts on how that would work, bringing in one contracted operator, so they have their own vehicle and it would be their own driver. Any comments about costs, and any comments about service levels compared to us operating our own fleet with our own drivers?
You, Madam Mayor, to yourself, Madam Mayor. Contracting in services like this can be a double-edged sword. I do have experience with having outside contractors performing winter maintenance activities in a previous life. It sometimes can be beneficial. It sometimes can be a lower level of service. I can't speak directly to who we would have come in and do this service for us. I do honestly have always believed that you get your best service from the people who you're employing. That being said, I do believe there is a place for contracted services. I just don't know if winter maintenance is one of those places for it to serve. Your costs can be increased with contracted services as well. So when for example, if I call one of our staff in to come in and just plow some drifts, I'm paying them for a minimum wage as per their CBA, whereas if I have to call in a contracted service, maybe that contract reads that they're paid for a full shift for that. And then I also have to come in myself and ensure that work was done properly, whereas I do have a certain level of faith and trust in the operators that we employ here to know they're going to go out and do exactly what I'm asking them to do.
Okay, thank you for that. One of the things that I heard yesterday, and this is perhaps a question then for Mr. Kipp, one of the questions that I had was about the certification process for this vehicle, to know that there's not any kind of exposure that we have, or any kind of perhaps unnecessary liability we would maybe be taking on in having an operator in a truck. That has been written off, and I wonder if you can just reiterate. My understanding was that the certification process would indicate to us that truck would be then like a new truck, and I'm wondering if you can just recap that to make sure that my understanding was accurate.
Yes, Madam Mayor to Madam Mayor.
You can just speak to me directly, that's all right.
Okay. So the certification process is put out by the province of Ontario. That certification process, it involves quite a bit. So the truck, if we were to go ahead with it, would go to the body repair facility. It would get straightened. It would have to be photoed the whole way through, meaning pictures were taken of it damaged before, as the process went along, the integrity of the frame, they would take pictures of it the whole way along. Then it would go to a place like Surgeon or Truck Center. They would put it on their alignment rack. They would themselves do the same process over again, meaning they would look for any deficiencies if it wasn't straightened, if the wheels didn't line up. There's a process there as well. It would be photographed as well. Then it will go to a recertification facility, which is in the south end of Ottawa, and they certify this truck as OEM specification or as of new. what they do is they do an integrity check on the frame, and they will verify it, and they will stamp it, and they will deem the ownership repaired. Yes, that does have that designation on the ownership, but we're not in a position to be selling this truck. We are going to keep it till the end of life. So we are not really, we're not going to gain anything if it says repaired or not. The only thing that we lose is the ability to get full replacement value out of the vehicle, and it will be deemed by the insurance company no different than anyone else's vehicle that they drove here today. Those vehicles are under a process that is derated from new, and they would do an assessment on the total of the vehicle. So if we put in and put on new equipment on this truck, they're going to take that into an account, that that equipment was new.
Okay, thank you for that, that clarification. So I'm just looking at our agenda here. We do, like our last motion, there is a recommendation, but the need to choose an option. I think I heard 3 or 4 different options there. And I'm looking for council, someone from council to put forward a motion with the preferred option for specific debate and vote.
Councillor Gerard, I would like to recommend that with a small change, that option 4 and option 5 are looked into. The change I would like to see, I guess on option 4, is I would like to see some of the money that we receive for the damaged truck to be used to complete and put on the road our existing, or the fire truck, the vehicle that has is in the conversion process, get it on the road, and then I'd like to see the rest of the money put in reserves, please. So perhaps if that can be changed, so option 4, that the first sentence can be changed to that the money will be used to complete and get the fire truck conversion on the road, and then the rest of option 4 and option 5, please.
Okay. Just before looking for a seconder for that, I'd like to get clarity from the Acting Director of Public Works. My understanding is the timeline on the contract on the tender out on the fire truck is got a timeline of winter 2021. I don't know that realigning money to it at this point would change that timeline of having it available for the entire winter operation season, but I'd look to get that clarity from our director or acting director of Public Works, Mr. Armstrong.
Yes, Madam Mayor, that conversion of that truck, there shouldn't be any more additional costs. Certainly not that would require any capital spending. The running gear's already been tendered out, which was included in our capital budget. The box has already been tendered out and is in the midst of being purchased. It's just been held up with COVID-19. Should be delivered within the next 2 months. So I don't believe there's any major capital spending left for that fire truck conversion. It's more just timing now.
Okay, I was under the impression that there would be, it would have to be certified and go through MTO standards before it was put on the road.
For you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Gerard, no, that truck as it sits right now in our possession is already certified to be on the road. Okay,
and am I wrong in I thought that I had been told that there was a possibility that vehicle, that truck, would be possibly in the fleet as early as September of this year?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Gerard, no, that truck with the tendering process for the running gear and fit up through one of our subcontractors, Gencor, we're slated to be the end of January 2021 for that truck to be completed.
Okay, that was not, I was told something different, so I guess I was incorrect with that. Thank you.
Perhaps before we continue, there's two things I think would be helpful if we could get clarity on. One is just in terms of the money we have here, and I'll go to the treasurer for that. But I'll go to the treasurer first for that. But then I'd like to come back to Mr. Armstrong and Mr. Kipp just to clarify the timeline for the converted fire truck, because that does seem to be a point of a point needing some clarity as well. So I'll first go to our treasurer, who I believe is on the call as well.
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Could you provide some comment about the money that we have in front of us from the payout and having it reallocated for other purposes?
It's my understanding that the monies allocated to the fire truck conversion are in place already. So we had a budgeted allotment, and any over expenditures that have come before council have been approved. There's not any, or I don't have any visibility on any additional costs to get that vehicle up and running. So I don't think through this motion or this recommendation that there's any need to reallocate monies to that truck at this time.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. And then just going back to the director, the acting director of Public Works, Mr. Armstrong. It is a matter of timing with the tender is my understanding, to get the converted fire truck up and running. It's not one of needing to allocate other funds. And I wonder if you can clarify for myself and council what that timeline is, and why it is that the converted fire truck will not be available until end of January or February 2021, rather than it being available for operations this fall.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'm going to let our mechanic Ben Kipp answer that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Krista. So when the tender went out, it got deferred 2 times, I believe, to approve the actual running gear and the fit up on this vehicle. There was some uncertainty because of COVID-19 where things were at. Businesses throughout all of Ontario were being closed. There was a pile of businesses that would have to move their shifts around. So when it actually did get approved by council, the vendor decided to go on the side of caution, and they moved it to February 1st, I believe, of 2021 of the completion date. They had problems at the processing plant to build the equipment. They had shutdowns. They also had people that were infected. And these things still can take place. So they felt the need to move that date out that far and be comfortable with a legal, like their legal standpoint on a completion date out that far.
Okay. Thank you for that clarity, because I think that is something that the council has been trying to understand. So I appreciate that. So coming back to Councillor Gerard, do you wish to put either option 4 or option 5 forward, or is there something otherwise that you would want to put forward as a motion?
I would like to have option 4 and option 5 joined together, and that would be the choice that I would like, yes. So I want the money in the reserves, and I want the conversation to keep going with regards to tendering. I believe we have not yet done the public works evaluation. I believe that's something that I was told was coming up, and I feel that we should be possibly looking at that with regards to what we actually are going to need. So I would like option 4 and option 5 combined, please.
Okay, so that's to say that we're keeping the money then in reserves to offset any shortfall in tendering the replacement for truck number 22.
Correct.
And option 5 then to research the possibilities of contracting some of that winter maintenance activities. So you're looking to both sides here. You're looking for the capital side and the operating side. Is that
correct?
Okay. I'm just going to go to the clerk. Is there any need to have it separated, that we look for like a split question, that one looks at the capital side and one looks at the operating side? Just looking for a comment from our clerk on that.
I don't see the need to split up the motion unless council would like to vote on them separately.
Okay, so there's no reason we can't do that. Okay. So then the recommendation, as Councillor as Councillor Gerard has put forward, is that council receive the insurance payout for damaged dump/plow truck. The council received the insurance payout for damaged plow truck report for information as prepared by the acting director of Roads and Public Works on May 5th, 2020. And that council directs staff to pursue option 4 and option 5 regarding the insurance claim for truck number 23 in the Roads and Public Works Department fleet. So we have a mover for that. Is there a second? Anyone to second that recommendation?
Councillor Holmes, I'll second it.
Okay, so it's seconded by Councillor Holmes, and I'm going to council for comment, starting with Councillor Dalgety.
I was also under the impression that the fire truck conversion would have been ready for the start of this season, and therefore I thought the same amount of vehicles would be in the fleet as last year. So this information is new to me. So they would be short one truck at least at the beginning of the season for sure. In that case, I would say option 5 would be more preferable, because we would definitely need someone to take up that position. Whereas I was thinking previously that if we did have a bad winter, we could use a contractor here and there when required. That's my thought now, that the money from the insurance can go into reserves, see where we sit, I guess, after the next budget based on the winter, but look at option 5 now, where we just have a contractor to take up that position of the truck. Thank you.
Okay. And Councillor Ferguson, any comments or questions?
Yeah, yes, thank you. I have a couple of questions. Under option 4, single axle replacements. Are single axles not gone by the way of the dodo bird as far as utilization anymore? And that's the first part of that number, option 4. And option 5, I think that where are we going to stop with the research? And I've always been pushing for the modernization funding to be used for this type of research, whereby we're identifying some type of savings. And depending how deep we go into our research, are we only researching internally, or are we also going to research externally?
You, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Ferguson. So the single axle truck, no, it is not something we don't utilize. We utilize 2 single axle trucks in Almont to perform all the winter maintenance there on a regular winter event. We do have 2 of those trucks that we deploy from our Ramsey garage for Almont. They are specifically kept for Almont just because of the tighter roadways, the lesser material, but we do still utilize those. The second part of your question with the research, that was something actually I was going to ask back for direction from council on. There's a number of things that we can look into in trying to research any kind of costs and service levels from this. So if there could be some kind of an outline given as for what council would like to see in that research, staff will endeavor to provide that back to you.
Councillor Ferguson, maybe I will invite Mr. Kelly, CEO Kelly, to see if he has any comments, because your question certainly underlines the work that we're endeavoring to do with the service delivery review. I understand the RFP has closed, but I'm not sure where we are beyond that, and I wonder if you could provide some comments there, Mr. Kelly.
Thanks, Mayor Lowry. Yes, the RFP for the service delivery review closed. We're currently evaluating it. I'm hoping to have a reply or a recommendation back to council for your May 19th meeting. That work would kick off, more than likely not be completed until late August to mid-September. So that's when you would start to see a report. Whether the recommendation coming out of the report would be to the effect of do more contracting out or do X, Y, or Z, or if it would be something similar to what we likely see from larger consulting projects, this is an opportunity for you to explore. So that would be an open door to do further research. So I think you're in a situation here where you're down one truck. Are you going to wait for the results of the service delivery review? That's not going to give you an answer to set you up in time to have a tender in place for November of 2021. The purchase of that single axle truck, single axle trucks are still a mainstay in municipalities across Ontario. Some have only single axle plow trucks. Some will tender out all their tandem axle work depending on the classification of the road. So, with regards to the single axle truck, it does have a very good use in, as Mr. Armstrong said, tight turning radius areas where you don't have a long distance to go to resupply for salt and sand, which we don't in the case of Alma. The last thing is a brand new truck replacement is not something, these trucks are not sitting on a lot somewhere we can get one in 6 months. I'm not sure if Mr. Armstrong has a timeline for delivery on trucks, but the chassis for these trucks generally come out of the States. They're priced in US dollars, so we do have the exchange rate to factor in here. So when we put a price tag on one of these trucks as this is relatively where it could be, if the exchange rate changes and a significant amount of the truck value is the chassis, engine, and cab, which is in US dollars, we could see a significant change in the price of these trucks based on the fluctuation of the Canadian dollar to the US, which we have no control over. The delivery timeline, I believe, for a truck right now is in excess of a year. So even if we ordered a brand new truck tomorrow, we wouldn't have it for the winter season. So this is why there's the options that are coming on the table are, what can we do to have a vehicle for this winter? That's what this is about. In terms of I'm totally indifferent. I've had brand new trucks that lose their engine in less than 10,000 kilometers and is an $80,000 fix for a new engine. I've had old trucks that seem to last forever, and I've had old trucks in fleets that we seem to pour money into constantly. I think this becomes a comfort level. The engine in the truck is a big part of what we're trying to focus on here. There are bad engines in the marketplace, and you can buy a brand new engine that is very bad. Not to slam or to go negative on any particular vendor, but we do have bad vendors out there in terms of the quality and the longevity and reliability of their product. I think what staff are putting forward here is, here's an option for you to have a vehicle ready for this winter. Buying new to be ready for this winter, unless somebody has something on their lot that we can go and put our hand on, not really possible. We could go out into the used market, but again, that's another ball of wax in terms of complexity. And can we actually test drive these vehicles before we buy them? Are we buying them at auctions and all those other things? I think what staff have put forward to you is a good option. You have an option to fix something that we already know, which is the engine and transmission that we already know. You have an option to delay some capital and push it further down the road. And who knows, in a year's time, we may actually have an answer to that service delivery question of what should we do, contract out or internalize. So I'll leave it at that, Mayor Lowry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Mr. Kelly. Does that help your questions, Councillor Ferguson? And was there anything further that you wish to comment on or question about option 4 or option 5?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gerard. Questions and comments regarding 4 and 5? Those were your motions.
No comment.
Okay. Councillor Holmes?
So I agree with what Councillor Ferguson had said. I think he made some good comments. And I also agree with Councillor Dalgety. I was sure yesterday I heard that the feeling was that the fire truck conversion could be pushed ahead to and be ready for this fall. So I must have misheard that. The other question I have to our acting director of public works is we have graders. Can they be pulled into service to help with the plowing?
To you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Holmes. Just an attempt to clarify. So I don't believe it was communicated when council was looking at the trucks that we could spearhead and sort of initiate the fire truck conversion to happen any faster. What the conversation piece was that we were anticipating with working with our subcontractor for repairing the damaged truck, that it could be done possibly sooner than the fire truck conversion because we weren't tied to a contract with them. They sort of replied to us that they would have it done before the end of the calendar year. This is a damaged truck I'm talking about, not the fire truck conversion truck.
Thank you.
I hope that helps clarify that, and I apologize if there was any miscommunication there. And to answer your question, Councillor Holmes, all 3 of our graders that we have are already fully rolled out for every winter maintenance activity we have. They maintain a large number of our gravel roads through the winter months.
So just to clarify then, so there's 8 trucks and 3 graders on the road whenever there's a storm. Is that what you're saying?
To you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Holmes, no, currently, sadly with number 23 not being on the road, we have 9 trucks in our fleet and 3 graders, as well as 3 sidewalk machines, that go out for every storm. Sorry to come back, also a loader that helps do our dead ends in Almont.
Okay, thank you so much.
Councillor Maiden, any questions or comments about options 4 and 5, which are on the floor at this time?
I guess I'm a little bit frustrated because I know the fire truck conversion has been on the budget for a couple of years now. And that's taking a while. Last October, we were presented with a budget for a new plow truck, and we approved that in January, I think. And now we're saying, well, it's going to be a couple of years, and I'm just like, why hasn't it gone forward already? I don't understand that through the chair.
So why has the fire truck not gone ahead? Is that?
Probably both of them. Like I say, the fire truck has been, like we were kind of familiar with the fire truck conversion. That's been a topic of discussion for the past year, I think. And purchasing a new plow truck, that was approved in the budget for this year, and yet it hasn't gone forward. And I'm not really sure why, but I'm in favor of getting a new truck because as these things all age and as time goes on, we're going to have a schedule of replacement of them. I understand that's in the works, but I haven't seen it yet. I think we need to kind of move on with it and get a replacement truck. Contracting out and that sort of thing can wait, in my view.
So to the acting director, so then questions about why the truck in the 2020 budget hadn't already been tendered, and the question about timeline on the fire truck as to why it has not moved quicker at this point. Can provide some clarity there, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Maiden. So with the fire truck, I've only been here for about 7 months. I do realize that the fire truck conversion has taken a number of years. I can't speak directly to what some of the holdups were. I have heard what some of the issues were with it, and they sound viable. There was an issue with ownership with the leasing company, I believe, holding the truck for some time. I won't get into that conversation because I wasn't here for it, so I can't really speak to the actual details of it. I will say that we have moved forward with it over the last couple of months, and it is being refigured to be in our fleet for January of 2021. As for tendering out for the new single axle truck, I wasn't really privileged on what kind of schedule we had for tendering out for this truck. I know it was certainly on our schedule to have a tender release for that truck towards the end of first quarter 2020. With COVID-19 coming through in March, I can't remember exactly what date the budget was approved. It was sort of something we had in discussions with. I think sort of the tail end of the winter, and then with COVID-19 coming through, obviously the department has been working short staff for the last number of weeks, so it's certainly there. It started to be drafted, but as we look at the economic climate right now, it's probably not in the municipality's best interest to put out a tender for a single axle truck. We'll likely be paying a fairly astronomical cost over and above what the truck should relatively be worth, and certainly more than what we budgeted for in this year's capital budget.
Did you have further question, Councillor Maiden?
Not really, no.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Manelli? Any comments or questions about options 4 and 5?
I'm still stuck on option 5. I'm okay with that. So any comments is, can we keep truck 22 for another year without tendering it out?
To the acting director?
Yes, I'm asking direction, yes.
Yeah, sorry, I was directing your question to the acting director regarding truck number 22.
Yeah, sorry, my finger didn't hit the mute button.
Okay.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Manelli. Anything's possible. As you are aware, I think we had a discussion on Friday when you were viewing the trucks. Truck 22 was procured by Mississippi Mills, used from another municipality. It's a tired truck. We do have exceptional staff here that do maintain our equipment to a higher level than some other municipalities do. I wouldn't promise you that truck 22 will make another winter season with its full capability. I can say that we can make our best efforts to do so, but at the end of the day, things happen. Like I said, the truck is tired. It's past its sort of quote unquote scheduled useful life. But at the end of the day, council gives us direction, and we do our best with what we have.
So can you conceive subbing out the contract that truck does?
You, Madam Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Manelli. I can certainly research anything that council directs me to, Deputy Mayor Manelli. The parameters of that kind of research would be appreciated and required, so we kind of know what we're asking of a contracted service to perform.
It's just that we have this opportunity to try contracting out some snow plowing, and I think we should take advantage of it. That's all I have to say. And I still like option 5. Thank you.
So we've been through the list, and I just want to provide a few of my own comments. I do see value, as I think many members of council do, of investigating service delivery. And I'm looking forward certainly to that May 19th meeting, where we're going to be looking at the options ahead of us. I think the difference between having a service delivery take a look at whether or not it makes sense to be providing service in a different way, investigating opportunities to work with neighboring municipalities or the county and whatnot. The difference between that and the option that we're discussing right now is that we are forced to bring in independent operators, and that is not, in my view, putting the municipality in a position of control over costs and whatnot. If we're operating with a fleet that is short, I think that we will not have the same flexibility and will not have the same opportunities as if we are putting in measures or taking decisions based on what's best for service delivery. We would have to make the decision to have operators, independent operators in place. And I don't believe that that's our best option. Although I do look forward to that service delivery and examining how can we be doing things differently. We've been talking about, excuse me, we've been talking about working with the county, for example, or others in terms of modernization. We do have that modernization funding that this is all part of our service delivery, but I don't think the decision that is ahead of us with option 5 falls in line with that. My other concern is I think that the Roads and Public Works staff have brought forward an option that's very creative in a time that's incredibly unique. I think that we're going to have very unstable costings probably for some time, and I can certainly understand the reticence of staff not wanting to put a tender out right now when we are short a vehicle, and it is forcing us to make decisions rather than allowing us to consider options. It makes me uncomfortable with the idea of not taking the recommendation that staff have proposed. It is unusual. It is an unusual time, though, and I feel that it gives council in this municipality more options rather than less options. And I certainly understand the comments that have been shared by my colleagues, but I can't underline enough my concerns of having a fleet that is short and inviting costs that we don't have control over, given that we have minimum standards that we must ensure are met with our snow removal and winter operations. So I feel like option 4 and 5 are not in the best interest, and I can go down the list one further time for any additional comments. We do have this motion on the floor at this time, and I will be calling the vote once we've gone through and had everyone had a second option to ask any questions. I do want to ensure everybody is very clear about what is being decided at this time. So Deputy Mayor Vanelli had provided a second question and comments. I'll offer the same to Councillor Dalgety. So this is on the motion that's on the floor of option 4 and 5.
As I stated previously, I am in favor of option 5. I get a couple questions through the chair to Mr. Armstrong. You mentioned that the single axle, there's 2 single axles that provide service in Almont. The second single axle, I know one of them is up for tender, but the other one, what kind of shape is that one in?
You, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Dalgety. That truck is in fairly good shape. We had a number of minor issues with it this year with the wiring harness, just sort of a troubleshooting issue that we had to sort of chase for a bit. But ultimately, the construction of the truck is in good shape. Mechanically, it's fairly sound. We haven't had any catastrophic issues with it.
And a tandem in Pakenham, is it correct? It's 1995 and it's nearing the end life?
Through you again, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Dalgety. Yes, the second tandem truck that runs out of the Pakenham garage is a 1995 International, I believe, that is knocking on the door for the end of its life cycle. It's still a reliable truck, and we still touch wood that it performs the way it does.
So I'm probably safe to say over the next 2 to 3 years, we're looking at least 3 more trucks. Through the chair, to Mr. Armstrong.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Dalgety. I couldn't say that without actually going through our long-term financial plan that the Treasurer has provided to all department heads. I think service delivery would sort of give us a better understanding of that. Like I said, certainly just looking at it, you look at that 1995 truck out of Pakenham as well as our truck number 22 out of Almont. That's two trucks that I don't know where exactly they are currently in our long-range financial plan, but certainly it's an option to consider and something that we have to be forecasting for.
So I just stated again, Madam Mayor, I'm in favor of option 5. I think that's our best bet moving forward for at least for next year. Thank you.
So just to be clear, Councillor Dalgety, it's both options 4 and 5 that are what has been moved and seconded. Okay. Option 4, putting the monies in reserves, and option 5, researching possibilities for contracting winter maintenance activities. So those are both on the floor at this time, as the recommendation that Councillor Gerard has moved and Councillor Holmes has seconded. Just want to make sure that everyone's clear on that.
Clear, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Councillor Dalgety, any final comments on the motion that's on the floor?
That's it, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dalgety. Councillor Ferguson, any further comments or questions on the motion that's on the floor?
No, I will not be supporting that dual option. I think option 5 stands on its own to be reviewed at a considerable time and date. I am in favor of option 1. It's probably not the best, but we are under dire circumstances here for fleet vehicles, and I'm impressed with what they've done, so I would be in favor of option 1.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Gerard, any further comments or questions about your motion?
Actually, no. I was wondering at what point would I request that this is a counted vote?
You can do so at this time if you like.
Okay, I would like that added as well, please.
Sure.
That would be it, thank you.
Councillor Holmes, any further comments or questions?
No further comments.
Councillor Maiden, any further comments on the motion on the floor?
No, thanks.
And Deputy Mayor Benelli, any final comments or questions on the motion on the floor?
No comments or questions.
Okay. So we have the motion. I'll ask the clerk to read it out in its entirety for us, and it will be a recorded vote. And I'll just add my own comment before moving this to the clerk, and that I am concerned that having a fleet that is short at this time is leaving us open to difficult times ahead, when we already realize that there will be challenges given the climate, given what's happening with the dollar. And as I had stated before, I feel like we want to be in a position of making decisions not because we must, but be making decisions about operating as we choose to, given feedback from the SDR and given feedback from staff's further exploration of options. If we're operating with a short fleet, we don't have options. We will not have that same ability to make the best decisions for the municipality. We'll have to make decisions based on what we need for operating. So with that, I'll pass it over to the clerk just to read through the entire motion, and the vote is a recorded one as requested by Councillor Gerard.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. The resolution, as it's on the floor, reads that council receive the insurance payout for damaged dump/plow truck report as information as prepared by the Acting Director of Roads and Public Works on May 5th, 2020.
So, Ms. Hartfield, I'm just going to stop you. I'm not sure if others are having a hard time, but there's a little bit of noise on your line. I'm not sure. It's a little bit garbled. I'm not sure if there's a...
Okay, I'll try again. Is this better?
That is better, thank you.
Okay. So the motion as it stands on the floor is that council receive the insurance payout for damaged dump/plow truck report as information as prepared by the Acting Director of Roads and Public Works on May 5th, 2020. and that council directs staff to pursue option 4 to place $206,772.43 into reserves, with $60,000 going toward the replacement of truck 22, and that council directs staff to pursue option 5 to research the possibility of contracting some of the municipality's winter maintenance activities. So as Councillor Gerard requested a recorded vote, and I will start with Councillor Gerard first, with each member clearly stating their vote with a yes or a no, and I'll record and vote in the minutes. Councillor Gerard, yes or no?
Councillor Gerard, yes.
Councillor Holmes, yes or no? Sorry, can you repeat that, Councillor Holmes?
Yes.
Councillor Maiden?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Manili?
Yes.
Councillor Dalgety? Councillor Dalgety, you're on mute. Sorry. Councillor
Dalgety? On the call?
Yes.
How's your vote, yes or no?
Councillor Dalgety, yes.
Councillor Ferguson?
No.
And Mayor Lowry?
No.
So the vote is carried 5-2.
Okay, thank you. So moving ahead, our next item of business is the award of contract for the surface treatment program. The recommendation is that council award the contract for tender number PW 20-05. This is the 2020 surface treatment program, and awarding it to Thomas Cavanaugh Construction in the amount of $666,595.63. I'm looking for a mover and seconder for this recommendation.
Ferguson, yes.
Ferguson?
Holmes will second.
And thank you, Councillor Holmes. Do we have Mr. Corey Smith on the line? Is there anything he wished to provide in the way of information about this award contract?
This is essentially a housekeeping item. It was tendered under our procurement policy for projects that were approved during budget, and we are recommending award to the lowest bidder.
Okay, thank you. And I will go to council for comments or questions about the recommendation that is on the floor, starting with Councillor Ferguson.
Yes.
Sorry, councillors, did you have any comments or questions on the recommendation?
No, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Gerard?
Councillor Gerard, no comment.
Councillor Holmes, any comments or questions?
No comments.
Councillor Maiden?
No comment.
Deputy Mayor Manelli? Deputy Mayor Manelli, any comments or questions on the recommendation to award the contract to Cavanaugh for surface treatment?
No comment, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Dalgety, any comments or questions on this award of contract?
No comments, thank you.
Okay, so we have a mover and seconder. We'll go through our list then, looking for votes of support or otherwise for the recommendation, beginning with Councillor Dalgety. Yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Holmes? Councillor Maiden?
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Manelli?
Yes.
Thank you. That contract will be awarded to Thomas Cavanaugh. Item number 6 is the award of RFQ for concrete work to Prestige Design and Construction as outlined in their submission. We're looking for a mover and seconder for this recommendation.
Councillor Maiden.
Councillor Dalgety.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Maiden and seconded by Councillor Dalgety. And I would go to the Acting Director of Public Works, Mr. Armstrong. Is there anything you may like to speak to on this before going to council?
Yes, Madam Mayor, just quickly, essentially the same as Corey Smith mentioned earlier. It's just more a housekeeping issue. We do have a number of concrete repairs to effect through the year. Some of it from winter damage, some of it just from age and deficiencies. We put this out 3 years ago, I believe was the last time it was out, and I was requested to release it again, and these are the bids that we got.
Okay. Thank you. And starting with Councillor Gerard, do you have any comments or questions on the recommendation?
No comments, thank you.
Councillor Holmes?
No comments.
Councillor Baden?
No comments.
Deputy Mayor Manelli?
Just a couple.
Okay.
I see it's by the square meter. This is to the acting director of public works. The square meter at the thickness 150 mil, right? Most of the sidewalks in Elmont are monolithic curb and sidewalk. Is that included in that price, or is that extra when they do that?
For you, Madam Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Manelli, it was spoken to with the contractor that won the award. It would be included in that price.
The monolithic curb and on all sidewalks.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. And besides that, I'm glad we got a new contractor, and hopefully they'll do some really good work. Thank you.
Councillor Dalgety, any comments or questions?
Just a comment through the chair to Mr. Armstrong. At some point in the near future, could we please get a priority list of the sidewalks? Thank you.
For you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Dalgety, yes, it's part of our spring maintenance after the winter. We will be working on that, Corey Smith and myself, to have it completed this spring.
Thank you. That's all, Mayor Lowry.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ferguson, any comments or questions?
Could we explain the significant difference in the three prices? The fact that we have not had previous work for or with the chosen contractor, and there's significant difference. Is there reasons for that now, or just the amount of work that's outstanding for the other ones maybe? But it seems like to me it's a significant difference.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Ferguson, yes, that was certainly noted when we were looking at the submissions. I couldn't speak for any of the contractors and how they provided and came to the conclusion of their pricing. It is even an increase from the current bids. I don't have them in front of me, but it is a nominal increase to the per meter or per square meter pricing. But I couldn't speak to any of the contractors and where they got their figuring from. I did field a number of questions from them, but within the last week that the RFQ was open. I think some of it could just be I believe all three of them are out of the city of Ottawa, so even just allotment of work, if they're figuring they had to come out for just one small project and still have to try and fill a work day with for their staff, I'm not sure, but I couldn't give you a definite answer on that.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, so we have got a mover and seconder for the recommendation. I'll go to the top of the list then to look for your votes. Councillor Dalgety, yes or no in favor of the recommendation?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Holmes?
Yes.
Councillor Maiden?
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Manelli?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And that takes us to report number 7. This is the award of contract flushing and CCTV of sanitary sewers. The recommendation is that council award the contract for tender number PW-20-13, the flushing and CCTV of sanitary sewers, 2020 to 2023, to the numbered company 2414002 Ontario Inc. For on-site sewer services in the amount of $160,789.52. HST is included. I'm looking for a mover and seconder for this recommendation. Councillor Holmes, moved by Councillor Holmes and seconded by Councillor Dalgety. I will go to our technologist, Mr. Corey Smith, for some any beginning comment he may have on this award of contract.
Once again, it's another housekeeping issue. We have to tender these services every 4 years. We do 1 quadrant of Almont's sewer system for cleaning and CCTVing each year for our maintenance program. So we get our pricing in a 4-year segment so that we have a consistent contractor, and we tend to get better prices this way. Basically, the prices are reasonable and in line with expectations, and we recommend award.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Smith. I'm looking for I have a mover and seconder, pardon me. Going then to council for any comments or questions you may have on this recommendation, beginning with Councillor Holmes. Councillor Holmes, did you have any comment or question on this recommendation?
No comment.
Councillor Maiden?
No comment.
Deputy Mayor Manelli?
No comment, thank you.
Councillor Dalgety?
Comment.
Councillor Ferguson?
No comment. Thank you.
And Councillor Gerard?
No comment.
Thank you. So we have a mover and seconder on the floor. I'll go through council then to receive your votes. Starting with Councillor Dalgety, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Holmes? Councillor Maiden?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Manelli?
Yes.
Thank you. That carries. Thank you very much. And this brings us to Finance and Administration, report number 8. We have our treasurer, Rhonda Whitmarsh, I believe, still on the call with us. And we have the interim report number 3 on financial implications for COVID-19, found on pages 43 to 52 of your agenda package. Now we'll turn this to the treasurer. She's on the line with us, I believe, still.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, hello again, and I will pass this over to you to provide some comments to council.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Lowry. So this report is a further update on the financial implications of COVID-19 as certain facilities remain closed. So if we could turn to page 44 in the daycare. So on table 1 of my report, page 48, the deficit position of the daycare to April 27th, which was the time of writing this report, is $46,030. And typically the daycare at this particular time of the year is in a surplus position. So I expect that the deficits will continue and grow in this department, even though staff are on leave until we are able to reopen and start accepting children again and being able to bill families. For recreation, it's table 2, page 49. Again, they have a deficit of $40,349 to April 27th. This is not abnormal for recreation at this time of year. Once the ice season concludes, there typically is not a lot of revenue generated by this department. There is some rental of fields that go on through the summer and so hall rentals. So not sure where we're at with those, if they'll be able to proceed. But I expect likely this deficit will continue right through to the fall and may grow if we're not allowed to rent out the ice, depending on how things progress with the COVID-19 closures. The Almont Town Hall Auditorium generated revenue to April 27th of just over $14,000, about $14,500, and it was $15,466 for the same time period in 2019. It's still fairly consistent, a little lower. I'm not concerned about that one at this point. Library, table 3, page 50, again is in a deficit position. I reported that at the last meeting as well. Again, not unusual for them to be in a deficit position. They were at the same period in 2019 as they're waiting on their household grants to come from the province, and they don't usually come in until the fall. The building department is still operating in a surplus position of $35,744 to April 27th, and as is water and sewer. So that was $91,221. Both of these found on table 4, page 51 in your agenda package. I don't have any other concerns to bring to your attention at this time. My report is fairly consistent with the previous one, contains much of the same information, and my next report will be talking about the final tax billing.
Thank you very much, Ms. Whitmarsh. I would go to the CAO if there's any comments from yourself, Mr. Kelly, on the interim report number 3.
No, other than there was concern that was raised by at least one councillor with regards to potential impacts on cash flow and how we would see cash flow being impacted if people cannot pay bills. And as you can see here, we are showing some impacts, but I do believe in the next report we're going to address what we foresee as options for dealing with cash flow. But just if people are having concerns about cash flow at this moment in time, maybe the next report will help address those, just so you know.
Okay, thank you for that. So I'm looking for a mover and seconder for this interim report to receive it for information.
Councillor Maiden, move.
Thank you, Councillor Maiden.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. And Councillor Maiden, any comments or questions about the interim report number 3?
No comments.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Manelli, any comments or questions?
No comments, thank you.
Councillor Dalgety?
Comment.
Councillor Ferguson?
No, thank you.
Councillor Gerard?
Comment.
Thank you. And Councillor Holmes?
Just to say thank you for keeping us up to date and giving us such a good report.
So the recommendation to receive this report has been moved and seconded. I'll go to the top of our list of councillors to get your support or otherwise for the receiving of this information. Beginning with Councillor Dalgety, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Holmes?
Yes.
Councillor Maiden?
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Manelli?
Yes.
Thank you. The next report from Finance and Administration is the 2020 tax rate bylaw. So we do have the bylaw to approve as presented. We also need to choose an option of which way we will be going forward in terms of relief of interest of tax payments. I will begin by going to our treasurer, Ms. Whitmarsh, for some starting comments.
Thank you, Mayor Lowry. So moving forward, it is just about time for us to prep for final tax billing, and we do need to pass the tax rate bylaw in order to do so. I believe that there will be people in the community because of COVID-19 who are suffering financial constraints, whether through job losses or some other form, who may be unable to pay that final tax billing on the due dates, which are historically due the end of July and the end of September. I was trying to come up with solutions, and I am 3 options in my report that would assist those taxpayers in having some flexibility in paying that final tax billing, but also provide cash flows to the municipality, and also provide an option that is manageable. So previously, council had approved residents being able to call me or email me and the CAO to arrange for some sort of payment plan. But as you can see in my report on page 54, the chart that's there, there's a significant number of taxpayers who pay directly to the municipality. So they're not on our payment plan or don't pay directly through their mortgage company. So there's over 4,800 residents who pay their tax bills directly. So that could potentially be a number of people, possibly hundreds, if not more, calling to make payment arrangements. So in order to alleviate that, I thought of three options, and I'll go through them with you. So the very first one would be that we continue with the payment plan option, that they would have to call in and make arrangements. But as I mentioned, that could be administratively overwhelming, not only to establish those payment plans, but to monitor them as follow-up. The payment plan recommendation, however, would stay in place for billings such as daycare, water, and recreation or other general invoicing. Option 2 would be to change the actual final due dates from July and September to September and November. Again, this causes additional cash flow, or could potentially cause additional cash flow issues for the municipality, because there are those residents, even though they could pay on normal due dates, would obviously wait and pay them on these deferred due dates. And also we would have to alter our pre-authorized payment due dates and mortgage company due dates. So that I see as being contributing to our cash flow problems that may arise. Option 3 is the one that works the best. So that is keeping the same due dates of July and September, but waiving the penalties and interest on the 2020 tax billing. So that means that people would have right up until the end of December to make their payments with no additional penalties. It would also mean that pre-authorized payment plans and mortgage companies would still pay on time. I've not been notified that they're unable to do that. And it would also mean that I won't have people calling me, so it would be very manageable. And then on page 55, I've noted how the bylaw normally reads. So penalties are normally applied at the beginning of each month for after non-payment, and we're waiving that. So I've put the recommended wording in there that no penalty would be applied until after December 31st. The way the bylaw appears in your agenda package, it's in there with this recommended wording. So you can decide, or it's council's decision which option that you want to go to, but just so you know, the bylaw has already been put forth with that amended wording.
Thank you, Ms. Whitmarsh. I would go to the CEO if there's any additional comments you may like to add.
Just that I wasn't sure if Ms. Whitmarsh did touch on this point, but we haven't received any real amount of inquiries. I'm not even sure if we've received any inquiries with regards to people who want to try and make alternative plans or arrangements. And you would think that with regards to the pre-authorized, the monthly, if people were actually experiencing cash flow revenue issues at this moment in time, we would have heard from them to say, please turn off that monthly. We can't honor that payment going forward. And that's not happening. Now, it is a relatively small portion of the people. I believe it's only 17% that are on that, but it is an indicator that we aren't seeing that. I'm not sure whether we're going to see a large flood of people that are going to be knocking on our door looking for arrangements. But when we do defer the payments, or at least remove the penalties and interest, we are going to have to follow up with those people to inquire why a payment was not made and to note them. So there is going to be a level of administrative work here, and that's obvious. I mean, we are trying to make some changes to what's happening, and we are going to have to reach out to these people in some way. So there will be a level of additional work with all the options. We just had to, I guess, pick which one we're more comfortable with as council. And I do believe that some of the other municipalities have taken the step of waiving penalty and interest and are using the same type of timeline of December 31st, 2020. So I think it would be consistent with probably other neighboring municipalities. Leave it at that. Mayor Lowry, thank you.
Thank you. I think I will go to comments before putting a recommendation on the floor for this one. So we'll start with Deputy Mayor Minnelli for any comments or questions you may have.
Thank you. Just a few, I kind of agree with CAO Kelly that there hasn't been too many inquiries. The people that pay their taxes individually without maybe 3/4 of them people own their houses. So I like the way we put it out already and just leave it the way it is and just defer the interest till the end of the year. Don't defer any payments, just the interest. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Dalgety.
I'm okay with option 3 as recommended by the treasurer.
Councillor Ferguson.
I agree with the treasurer's recommendation.
Councillor Gerard.
I agree with the recommendation.
Councillor Holmes.
I also agree with the recommendation.
Okay, and Councillor Maiden.
I agree as well, but I would note that there's probably going to be a lag time as to when any issues will emerge. I think it's too early to really see the emergence of it yet.
So the recommendation in your agenda package is that council approve the 2020 tax rate bylaw as presented. And I just underline that that is utilizing option 3 as the treasurer had indicated. So I'm looking for a mover and seconder for this recommendation, please.
Move Ferguson.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson.
Second, Dalgety.
Thank you, Councillor Dalgety. And then I'm going to call the vote on this, starting with Councillor Dalgety. Yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Holmes?
Yes.
Councillor Maiden?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Manelli?
Yes.
Thank you. And that takes us to several information items. The first is a summary of the MVCA Board of Directors meeting. And the recommendation is that council receive the Board of Directors meeting summary as information. Looking for a mover and seconder. Councillor Holmes moves, Councillor Maiden seconds.
Yes, thank you.
And I'll just give a moment if anyone has a comment on this summary. Hearing not, I'll call the vote on receiving this as information, starting with Councillor Dalgety. Yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Holmes? Councillor Maiden?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Manelli?
Yes.
Thank you. Library Board minutes. This is item number 11. The recommendation that council receive the April 3rd, 2020 Library Board minutes as information. Looking for a mover and seconder to receive this as information.
Councillor Maiden, move.
Thank you, Councillor Maiden. And a second.
Dalgety second.
Thank you, Councillor Dalgety. And I'll leave a moment if there is any comments to the minutes from the Library Board. Okay, hearing none, I'll call the vote. So we're receiving this as information, starting with Councillor Dalgety. Yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Holmes?
Yes.
Councillor Maiden?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. And there is a 12th item. The agenda was revised to include a request for a letter of support. The recommendation is that council receive the information from Enbridge Gas regarding natural gas expansion as information, and that council authorize the mayor to issue a letter of support on behalf of the municipality. I understand that Enbridge needs this letter this week, so this is why the agenda was revised to include this recommendation. Is there a mover and seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Holmes. So Councillor Holmes and Councillor Ferguson. I'll go to our CAO for any comments about this this letter of support.
No, this is with regards to an application to extend natural gas to areas that are not currently served. They have provided us or asked us for a significant amount of information with regards to whether we know how people are heating their homes and things like that, whether it's electricity or wood. I guess they're really trying to figure out what their potential market share or customer intake is on some of these areas. So I think it's interesting that at this moment in time, Enbridge is willing to put forward an application. This is with regards to some provincial funding as well. So they're looking to have this information to start pushing natural gas further out into the community. So what we're doing is we're going back to them and through our best knowledge, with the Director of Planning as well, and input from Public Works, and trying to say to them, these are the areas that we expect to grow. These are the areas that we believe are underserviced. Can you look to these areas as part of your potential service plan? So we have given them areas that we believe. There is a map that they've asked us for. So we're providing information in support of this. And I do think it is an added feature that would be welcome in many areas of the community as an extra service that people have, or an extra option that they have. Whether it would actually be beneficial to maybe some people in the agricultural sector, or anybody who would be looking to offset propane use for things like drying of grains or crops or anything like that, not really too sure, and we don't really have that information, but I do think it provides an extra option. Thank you, Mayor Lowry.
Thanks for your comments. So we have a mover and seconder. I'll just pause a moment to see if there is any comments or questions on providing this letter of support. Okay, hearing not. I'll start with Councillor Dalgety. Yes or no in support of authorizing this letter of support?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Holmes?
Yes.
Councillor Maiden?
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Manelli? Deputy Mayor Manelli?
Yes.
Thank you. That brings us to the one bylaw, which is the tax rates bylaw for 2020. This is bylaw 20-038. I'm looking for a mover and a seconder for this bylaw. So I've got Councillor Ferguson and Councillor Dalgety. And I will just pause if there is any further discussion on this bylaw. I'll give a moment.
Councillor Gerard?
Go ahead.
To Treasurer, my question is on page 64, it's referring to 2016. Does that mean this is a 4-year program?
Through the mayor, no, it's not a 4-year program. That is when the last reassessment took place. So we're still based on a January 1st, 2016 valuation date for assessment, and it's being phased in over 4 years.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions or comments on this bylaw? Okay, hearing none, I will call the vote. Councillor Dalgety, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Holmes?
Yes.
Councillor Maiden?
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Manelli?
Yes.
Thank you. That brings us to our confirmatory bylaw. I'm looking for a mover and seconder for the confirmatory bylaw. Councillor Maiden?
Councillor Dalgety.
Councillor Maiden and Councillor Dalgety, thank you. All those in favor, beginning with Councillor Dalgety?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson? Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Holmes?
Yes.
Councillor Maiden?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Manelli?
Yes.
Thank you. And adjournment. Mover and seconder for adjournment?
Ferguson.
Councillor Ferguson and Councillor Holmes, thank you. All those in favor of adjournment? Councillor Dalgety?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard? Councillor Gerard?
I said yes.
Oh, thank you. And Councillor Holmes?
Yes.
Councillor Maiden?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Thanks very much, everyone.
David?
Has left the meeting.